next video is about how to think through creating different assessments for different types of goals. And we're going to really stick to goals that revolve around things you will most likely encounter, like recall, comprehension, application, and so on. So I have 4 goals from the science materials. In this case, right, I have one goal that's just about recalling terms and definitions, level 1 stuff. I have another goal where I want them to be able to differentiate or apply their knowledge of symbiosis to different types and different scenarios and application. I also want them to be able to identify whether an animal is predator or prey based on the environmental context. It's an application goal too, teaching them what to look for. And then I also have an application type analysis or / analysis goal, kind of a borderline thing, where students will understand the interdependence that exists between organisms, specifically how competition and adaptation lead to changes in the populations that live in an ecosystem. Now, to do this, I'm going to be looking through all my options that you've kind of read about so far, matching, short answer, multiple choice, etc. And I'm really thinking through everything but essays at this point. We'll get to extended essays. We're going to limit ourselves to restricted essays in this discussion. Restricted essays, just to clarify in case you missed this in the text, is really 1 to 3 sentences. Anything that gets to the paragraph length or longer, we're going to call an extended essay. Short answer in this class is going to refer to items that can be answered with a single word or a phrase. When you get to the sentence length, then we're going to call it a restricted essay. And so I have, other options like matching, true and false, or alternate response, and multiple choice. And I'm thinking about the time it takes to make, to grade, and the quality of the information. So with matching, if I set it up right and follow the rules and use it when it should be used, right, it's pretty quick to make, it's pretty quick to take, and grading it is a snap. This should be a happy face. Don't know how a sad face got in there. However, the quality is not great, right? There's a guessing factor. There's process of elimination if I don't make it right and I end up using exact matches when I really shouldn't be, and so on. So I'm going to try to get this thing out of here. Oh well, I don't know how to do that. There we go. Okay, with true and false, really fast across the board. However, the quality stinks, right? Because 1, everybody's got a 50-50 shot. And 2, if they correctly identify that something is false, it doesn't mean that they know the truth or the right answer. So that's problematic, and one of the limitations outlined in the chapter and in another video that will be posted shortly. You have multiple choice. It takes a little longer to make. You have to think through the different options and distractors. A little longer to take because there's just more to think about for the students. But grading is really fast, and it gives me moderate quality. Again, there is the 1 in 4 chance of getting it right, and so on. With short answer, very fast to make, a little longer to take, and a little longer to grade. You wouldn't think that it would take all that much longer, but students, don't have a list to choose from, so they will probably spend more time trying to remember things. You also have the fact that they have to write some things, and especially for younger students, this can take some time. When we're grading it, it also takes a lot longer than you would think, because spelling can sometimes be an issue. Kids don't always write neatly. I know my handwriting's terrible. And you have to try to make decisions about, well, does that say Pizarro or pizza? And if it says pizza, do I give them credit for that, right? Or maybe it's and I don't know if they meant conquest or conquistador. And so I have to make decisions like that. I have better quality because the guessing factor isn't there, but I have to make sure that I structure my questions right so that there is only one right answer, which is a problem or a liability with short answer questions. Finally, I have my restricted essays. Again, fast to make, a little longer than you might think, but it takes longer. Grading is way longer, but the quality is really good. And so again, I'm always trying to balance these things. And there is no one right answer typically. It kind of depends on what you're prioritizing. For really important goals that you think are fundamental or foundational, you probably want better quality. But you might have to sacrifice some of that, especially if you're teaching English language arts, to keep your sanity, right? So we're going to use this as we kind of reason through what our options might be. So suppose I have this goal of defining terms, right? Well, I have population, community, competition, adaptation, symbiosis, mutualism, commensalism, parasitism, predator, and prey. Basic terms, right? If I think about my best options, well, matching, I have a limited number of homogeneous terms. And again, these are terms that will not cause guessing and process of elimination to be a problem. And since I have kind of sets, like there are types of symbiosis, population and communities are kind of their own thing and related to each other. And then competition and adaptation are related, and then predator-prey are related. So I have these kind of sections of concepts or terms. I also have a problem where I have a hierarchy in that if I'm trying to have them define symbiosis, anything, and I'm having them define the different kinds. If I ask them a question that is mutualism, another answer that is correct will also be symbiosis. And so if these are all together in one matching set, symbiosis can be used for literally anything and everything and still be right. And so I have a problem. I'd have to leave that out, which then makes it a matching section with really only 3 types, and my guessing factor goes up again. I have the short answer option, which reduces guessing, but it will take students longer to write, me longer to grade, and I may have legibility issues. And then I have multiple choice, where there's a guessing factor, and these will take longer to create and will take up more space on the paper. It's still flexible, and I don't have to deal with the hierarchy issues of symbiosis and its different types. Now, out of these then, short answer is probably my best bet. Although matching could work if I could get around the symbiosis problem, which I could, and you could, but I'll leave that up to you to think about. So examples are, write the unit term that best answers each question. And as Popham says, with younger students, direct questions are way better than fill in the blanks. So what is a characteristic that helps an organism compete in an ecosystem? Typo there. And the answer is an adaptation. What is an animal that hunts and eats another animal called? Predator, right? And so on. Don't need to think. I don't think I need to keep going with different examples. Now, for the second goal, students will be able to use their understanding to differentiate between different forms of symbiosis. I have my options, Matching. Well, there's really too few terms and they're overlapping, not good. Again, if I'm setting this up correctly, I have a scenario on the left, and then I have the options on the right. It probably makes sense to organize it as independent questions rather than try to force it into a matching scenario. Short answer, I could leave it up to them to tell me the different types. It reduces guessing, but it's going to take students longer to write, me longer to grade. Multiple choice, I could do it this way again, but depending on how I organize it, it's going to take up more space, and so I might go with something that is just more like true-false alternative response, which is really just multiple choice, except the options don't change from question to question. In multiple choice, the options change typically from question to question. And so I'd probably, in this case, go with either some form of alternative response, again, probably the best option, fast, because again, I don't want a student, if I go with a short answer, for them to write symbiosis in each case, which is technically correct, but not what I'm going for. So in my directions too, I would want to specify the type of symbiosis that is described and I just give them options. If I wanted to increase the guessing or decrease the guessing factor, I'd add another option that said something like not a type of symbiosis. And it looked like that. And then they just have to circle it faster, easier for me to grade, don't have spelling issues. Or if I'm not worried about my students and their handwriting and legibility and things like that, good at following directions, I can go with this. Cuts down on the guessing factor and is almost just as fast, although the students do need to take time to write. Now, because this is an application level goal, I want you to remember that you can't use examples from the text, so you have to identify the nature of the relationship that is occurring. I can use animals that they're familiar with, or I can extend the idea to humans and other applications of the idea of what is a mutualistic relationship, or a parasitic relationship, or a commensalistic relationship. Things you should know. If I'm thinking of goal 3, my goal is students will be able to determine whether an animal is a predator or prey based on the context. Matching, I don't really have enough terms, right? So it's not really an option. Short answer reduces guessing, but again, I have the typical issues. Multiple choice, again, not good. There's only 2 things, although I could throw in the third as neither, right? And then true, false, alternative response, probably the best option, actually. Basically like multiple choice, but again, as an alternative response, the options don't change. Now, one of the rules for actually endorsing true and false as a viable option is when you have a lot of items to go through, because they are so fast. And the number of items will give you a more reliable estimate, because if you just go with a couple, like 2 or 3, then you have the whole problem with guessing, and you're probably going to have a huge standard error and be far away from their true score in many cases. So because this is an application type goal, I give them a little scenario. Again, the key idea that I'm focusing on here is that I want my students to be thinking about the context and not just that a rabbit is always a prey or a fox is always a predator. I want them to identify different organisms and classify them based on what's happening as a predator, prey, or neither. Now, in this first example, right, because the hawk isn't doing anything, it's neither a predator nor a prey. A fox is the predator, rabbit is the prey, grass is neither. I go to the second scenario. The rabbit hears the fox and starts to run. The fox chases the rabbit, right? Okay, so I have my predator-prey thing. They wake up the hawk, who is also hungry, and the hawk wants to eat the rabbit too. The hawk swoops down to catch the rabbit, so now the hawk is prey, and the nest is neither. Rabbit gets away, the hawk is still hungry and thinks the fox will make a good meal, right? So now the big thing that I'm hoping they get is that the fox moves from predator to prey, the rabbit is neither, the hawk is still the predator, and the apple seeds, even though they're being eaten, right, they are not prey, because prey is not just stuff you eat. Plants aren't prey, they're just food, and so there has to be some kind of animal or insect in order for it to classify as prey. So these are some of the distinctions I'd be trying to draw out. I might throw in a scavenger, right, after the hawk kills the meal, right? It leaves, and then something else comes along, like a weasel or a vulture, and starts eating the carcass. And that's a scavenger and not a predator. So there's a difference in a nuance of how we understand these terms. And this is what I'd be trying to draw out of my students. I get to goal 4. Students will understand the interdependence that exists between organisms, right? When I think here, I'm getting towards application or analysis. And so then I'm actually going to be going into the idea that I could be using extended essays or performance assessments. Best options, right? Again, outlined here. Don't really need to read them. I would probably go with restricted essay or extended essay. The performance assessment, as we'll learn, is not worth it in this case unless I can tie it into some other goals. Performance assessments typically take a ton of time, and that is one of the big drawbacks with them. So examples of this, right? In Wisconsin, wolves and people hunt deer. Many years ago, all the wolves were killed by human hunters because the wolves were eating sheep and cows. This meant that the only predator the deer had in Wisconsin was humans. Describe what you think happened to the deer population and explain why. Again, this is this idea of competition, adaptation, and how things interact in an ecosystem. A good answer would include these ideas. I go on with another restricted essay question. Starting in 1921, several laws were passed to stop hunting. People could only hunt during a few months. People could also only hunt deer with antlers 3 inches or longer. Why do you think these laws were passed? Again, the students should understand and have enough background knowledge, if I prepare them well, to think about competition and pressure and interactions in nature. What do you think happened to the deer population? What do you think would have happened to the deer population if people were never allowed to hunt deer? Would the population just keep getting bigger, or would something else happen? Explain in 1 or 2 sentences. Now, you should note that these would require some additional supports through reading through the information as a class about the laws and the forests and the habitats of Wisconsin, or providing individual assistance to some students with low comprehension skills. And this is just one way. It has limitations, and there are many others. Graphs and short stories are good for hypotheticals. If it were really serious about this, I would incorporate it into a larger project that included a lot of my other goals as well. But that's not what this one is all about. So that's the idea of thinking through goals and options, right? The next thing that I want you to watch are a little more detailed accounts of the pros and cons of each assessment option you have.